What are the greatest feuds of all time? If you had to make a list of, say, the top 5 feuds, rivalries in human history, what would that list be made of? Just out of, my own morbid curiosity, I made my own list. I searched the internet diligently and came up with my own list of the top rivalries of all time. This is non-scientific, this is completely subjective, but I got the microphone, so I get to make the list, all right? The top 5 feuds of all time. And the number 5 spot, of course, the classic Hatfields and McCoys. Everyone knows that they had a feud. Nobody knows what it was about. In the number 4 spot, the kids of the 90s who are into East and West Coast rap, they will understand the feud between Tupac and Biggie Smalls. This was a very, very big deal, pun intended. And then for the number 3 spot, we move to history and politics. And of course, we have to mention the feud between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, which resulted in the death of Alexander Hamilton and also in the creation of one of the greatest Broadway plays of all time. And for the number 2 spot, we have to look at the world of pop culture and cartoons and recognize the bloody battle that persists to this day between Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. Terrible feud, terrible feud. But in the number 1 spot is a deep cut from thousands of years ago, deep in the Old Testament. You might not have put this on your list. It may not even have crossed your mind, but I will lay everything I have on saying that this is arguably the number 1 greatest feud of all time, the reverberations of which we are still feeling to this day. And it is the feud between 2 brothers, Jacob and Esau. Now, if you don't know who Jacob and Esau were brothers, twins, grandsons of Abraham, the father of all God's people. And they were sons of Isaac. And they had a rivalry starting in the womb. Jacob famously stole the blessing of the firstborn. Esau, who was technically the older of the 2, he famously stole the sacred blessing of the firstborn from Esau, and Esau was filled with rage. It only inflamed the feud between them. Eventually, Jacob and Esau would both receive different names. Jacob would become Israel, and Esau would be called Edom. And then they would each father large nations, huge families, the Israelites and the Edomites. And the feud between these 2 tribes, these 2 related tribes, descendants of these 2 brothers who had been fighting since the moment they were conceived, the feud continued throughout history. And as I said, it reverberates to this day. And the reason I tell you the story of Jacob and Esau is because today we've read the book of Obadiah, which addresses the feud between Jacob and Esau, between the Israelites and the Edomites. It's part of our summer series called Summer Shorts, where we're walking through the shortest of the books of the Bible. And Obadiah is the shortest book in the Old Testament, just 21 verses. It was written in the 6th century BC. Around 586 BC, to be exact, about 580-ish years before Jesus was born, at the time where the Israelites, the descendants of Israel, the descendants of Jacob, had been overtaken by the Babylonians, and Jerusalem, the sacred holy city, Mount Zion, had been ransacked. And the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, they were watching this happen, and they were cheering it on, celebrating it, and even taking part in it. And so Obadiah writes this prophecy, this sermon filled with passion against the Edomites for their hatred of their brother Israel and for their sitting back and watching their family member, despite the feud, their family member be overtaken and destroyed, and even and especially the fact that they would then in some way take part in it. Obadiah writes to condemn that activity. But the big overarching message of Obadiah is this, that there will come a day where the feuds between all of us cease. and mercy reigns. That's the overarching message of this book. There will come a day when the feuds between all of us, not just Israel and Edom, but between you and your family member, you and your former friend, you and all the other people in the world that you don't like, all feuds will cease. And there will be a kingdom, a family, bound together by mercy. And that kingdom will reign throughout the entire world. Now let's dive into some specific sections of this book of Obadiah and tease a little more understanding and insight out of it. I'm going to kind of walk through the text on the screen. I encourage you, again, if you haven't already taken out a Bible, don't have one with you, to pull one up on your phone and follow along with me. Obadiah, there's only one chapter, starting at verse 3. Let's see what else this book has to say about feuds and dysfunctional relationships and how it all applies to us. So we're going to start at verse 3. And Obadiah says this to the Edomites. He says, "The pride of your heart has deceived you." Now again, the you here is Edom. Now what's interesting to me is that in Hebrew, this word Edom is made up of the exact same letters as the word Adam. They are, in many ways, the exact same word. They just have different vowels attached to them. But any reader of Hebrew would look at it and say it's the same word. It's just defined differently based on its context. So Edom and Adam, and Edom is the name for the relatives of Esau. And Adam is, of course, the name of the first man, but it's more importantly the word for humanity, all of humankind. And you get the sense here as you read this that Obadiah's prophecy against Edom is not just a prophecy against the actions of the relatives of Esau, but he is condemning something that all of humanity is guilty of. Something that all of us, all of Adam, not just Edom, but all of Adam wrestles with in their relationships. Where there's rivalry, where there's feud, where there's dysfunction and disconnection where it shouldn't be. And he says the heart of it is pride. The heart of it is pride. Now again, a little insight from the Hebrew language. That word for pride in Hebrew can also be translated as overconfident, or it can be translated as cooking or hot. Hebrew's a really interesting language. It has a very limited number of words, and so each of the words in Hebrew has a lot of different potential usages based on its context. But we can understand something of what Obadiah is trying to say here when he says the pride of your heart has deceived you. You could say that pride is becoming hot with confidence. Hot with confidence. Why were they so confident? Well, you who live in the clefts of the rocks, make your home on the heights. They literally lived in these mountains, these desert mountains south of Jerusalem, up high on the heights, and it protected them from attackers like the Babylonians or the Assyrians or the Persians. And they felt very secure based on their physical location. They literally lived in the mountains. You who live in the clefts of the rocks, Edomites, and make your home on the heights, and who say to yourself, who can bring me down? No one can bring me down. Though you soar like the eagle and make your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. The Lord says, I am going to bring you down. I'm going to humble you. I'm going to bring you down from your confident high place, and I'm going to humble you. Again, in Hebrew, this word that is translated as bring you down means to slide down. As in sliding down the mountain. You're up high on the mountain, confident and safe. God is going to cause you to slide down. It's a landslide, if you will. It's Fleetwood Mac. Take your love, take it down, Edom. Right? God says, I'm going to humble you. Here's the point. Here's the message. At the heart of Edom's issue in their rivalry with Israel is pride. Way back in the day, they were hurt, they were wronged by their brother Jacob. And they feel as though they have the moral, theological, spiritual high ground, as well as the literal high ground, living in the mountains. And because they have this literal high position and this moral high position, they hurt me. They are filled with pride and confidence that I'm right and they are what? Wrong. I'm right, I'm good, they're wrong, and they are bad. At the root of the dysfunction between the two of them is pride. Pride results when there's a rivalry, and it's what helps keep the rivalry, the disconnection, the dysfunction between two people who should otherwise be connected as brothers in love and joy and peace. It's what helps keeps them apart. This is true in your rivalries, in your dysfunctional relationships too. Someone hurts you and wrongs you, and you feel as though you have the moral high ground, and maybe you do. You feel as though they're bad, you're good. You're right, they're wrong, because they're the ones who did something from you. They're the ones who stole the blessing from you. And you have a sense of superiority. You quite literally feel, understandably, as though you're better than them. And it's understandable, if not okay, to feel this way, at least for a moment. But it's not okay, it's wrong, it's sinful to hold on to it, to lean on it, to trust in it and to let it fester and to let it grow. I'm better than them. They wronged me. I'm good. They're bad. To dwell in and soak in this place of moral superiority, to live in the high ground. They're down low. I'm up high. I'm good. They're bad. That's pride. And it's what keeps the dysfunction alive. But it gets worse. What Obadiah is going to help us realize is that this pride, if it's held on to, it leads to all kinds of other awful, if not evil, attitudes and activities, because we then use that pride to justify terrible things happening to this person that we're at odds with. Let's continue. Looking now at verse 10. Obadiah says this, because of the violence against your brother Jacob, you will be covered with shame. Obadiah is literally saying, at the voice of God, you should be ashamed of yourself. Why? Because you let this violence happen to your brother. Another little interesting Hebrew insight. The Hebrew word for violence is Hamas. The word Hamas in Hebrew literally means violence. It's the same word that's used by a very active political group in the Middle East to this day. Just an interesting fact, not a commentary. Because of the Hamas against your brother, Jacob. Notice that Obadiah has ceased to reference Israel as Israel, and he's now calling him what? Brother Jacob. He's reminding the descendants of Esau, the Edomites, that this is family. This is why you should be ashamed. You are letting this Hamas happen to your brother. That's why you should be shamed. And because of that, judgment is going to come upon you. You will be destroyed forever. No one puts this verse in a Christmas card. What's the terrible thing that they did? On the day you stood aloof, while strangers carried off his wealth. So there was a day when Babylon attacked and you stood back and did nothing. And foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem. And because you stood back and did nothing and eventually joined them, you were like one of them. You should not gloat over your brother. Notice he is making a contrast between brother and strangers and foreigners. You stood back and let strangers take advantage of your family. This is shameful. And they cast lots for Jerusalem. In the ancient Near East, casting lots typically involved tossing someone like rocks or dice in order to win something as a prize. And so Obadiah is saying they were basically casting lots to take control of the holy city, and you did nothing. Where else in the Bible do we hear of people, foreigners, invaders to Jerusalem, casting lots? It's at the death of Jesus. At the death of Jesus, you see the Roman invaders, the Roman conquerors of Jerusalem casting lots for Jesus' clothing as if he's a nobody, just an object or an animal. You should not gloat over your brother in the day of his misfortune. I can't help but hear echoes here of Genesis chapter 4, verse 9. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 9, Cain has just killed Abel. And the question comes to Cain, where is your brother? How is he doing? And Cain, not wanting to admit to the murder, says rhetorically, am I my brother's keeper? Am I responsible for his well-being? And of course, the right answer to that is yes. You are responsible for his well-being. You're his brother. You are his keeper. But what did Edom do for its brother in the day of ransacking by the Babylonians? They gloated over their brother rather than help their brother. Obadiah describes the destructive power of pride in the heart of the Edomites. They think they have the moral high ground, the literal high ground. And what that does as they sit and soak in that pride is it dehumanizes their brother, the Israelites, the descendants of Jacob, and it allows them to sit back and be tortured and treated like animals. And not only do they sit back and allow their brother to be destroyed, but they take satisfaction in it. They gloat in it. They delight in it. And that, God says, is shameful and evil. But you know what? You and I are guilty of it too. The people that we're at odds with, the people that we might consider our enemies or we're sideways with, or there's dysfunction between the two of us, there's this thing in us that as we hold tight to that pride of I'm good, they're bad, I'm right, they're wrong, when they struggle, when they face difficulty, something in us kind of delights in it, doesn't it? The Germans would eventually invent a word for this. It's Schadenfreude, which quite literally means harm, joy. Scheuden, harm, fraud, joy. You take joy in their harm. When something bad happens to someone that you're sideways with, there's a little part of you that says, they got what they deserve. They got what they deserve. And that is what's happening to Israel, and Edom is enjoying it. Israel is getting what in Edom's mind they deserve, and they're enjoying it. And this pride that leads to abuse, this pride that leads to being disconnected from somebody's humanity and not only allowing bad things to happen to them, but gloating in it, it's at the heart of all evil, all injustice, all the bad things in this world. And what you have is God, through Obadiah, saying, I hate that. I hate it when people who are supposed to be siblings, brothers and sisters, allow a rivalry to fester between them and pride to take root amongst them to the point where they allow terrible things to happen to each other and abuse and all kinds of awful things to happen. And not only do they let it happen, but they enjoy it. I hate that. It's at the heart of all that's bad and broken in this world. That's what God is saying through Obadiah. And he's saying it not just to Edom, but to all of Adam, all of us. I hate it. Now, the good news here is, and believe me, it's actually good news, is that God later says, and we're going to read it in just a second, that there's a day of judgment coming where he is going to confront and condemn all of this evil, all of this pride that destroys relationships and sits at the heart of all that's awful in this world. Look with me at verse 15. Verse 15, Obadiah says, the day of the Lord is near for all nations. As you have done, it will be done to you. Dun, dun, dun. Your deeds will return upon your own head. Little interesting insight from Hebrew. I just like this phrase, the day of the Lord, because it's really fun to say in Hebrew. The word day in Hebrew is yom. And the word for the Lord, that's translated Lord here, is Yahweh. The Yom of Yahweh is near. It's just fun to say, the Yom of Yahweh. Yom of Yahweh is coming. It sounds really good, right? The Yom of Yahweh is almost here. It's Yom of Yahweh Eve, but the Yom of Yahweh it's a promise that God is going to show up and personally confront and condemn all that's awful and evil in this world. And in this context, he's going to confront the selfish, self-righteous pride that has fueled this disconnect between two people who should be brothers, and has fueled this abuse of Israel that Edom has celebrated. He's going to come and he's going to confront it. And the way he confronts it is that there is going to be a reaping what you sow. We see that all the time in the scriptures. This confrontation with pride is going to involve somebody getting done to them exactly what Edom has allowed to have happen to Israel. That's how God is going to confront this. Obadiah is making a promise that at some point God's going to show up personally and he is going to confront this evil. He's going to confront this pride that has destroyed relationships. And he's going to confront it by having what's happened to Israel happen to somebody else. Now, this is a hard word, and it's meant to be something that ultimately convicts those who are guilty of this. And we're all guilty of this. We're all guilty of letting pride ruin relationships. And what Obadiah is saying, there's going to come a day where God is going to judge all those who are guilty of this, and you're going to reap what you sow. That's not good. But it's also meant to comfort us. It's going to comfort us because not only are we all guilty of this, but we're all victims of this too. We've all been on the Israel side of this. We've all experienced to some degree, to some measure, some abuse or abandonment or mistreatment by someone who is supposed to love us and care for us and look out for us like family. And what this is saying is that God sees that, he's not okay with that, and he's going to come and deal with that. But a day is coming where God's going to confront this mess. Now here's where the good news comes. What we believe as Christians is that this day of confrontation, this Yom of Yahweh, has actually arrived already. That this confrontation has already taken place. And this confrontation took place on the cross of Jesus Christ and in his resurrection on the third day. What we believe is that Jesus Christ, in his life, death, and resurrection, he confronted and defeated the relationship-destroying power of pride. That prediction that Obadiah had, that someone would be put under that which Israel had to suffer as judgment, that came true with Christ on the cross. I mean, think about it. Jesus is rejected by his own brethren. And he is then abused and mocked and beaten and killed by foreigners, by strangers, by the Roman occupiers. And he is rejected and abandoned by his own disciples, his own family, leave him to die. And some of them even take part in it, Peter betraying him. What happened to Israel in the betrayal of Edom happened to Jesus. What we do to each other has been done to him. He suffered under it so as to take the punishment for it, so that we can say that justice has been done. I mean, God could have shown up on the Yom of Yahweh, the day of judgment, and put all of that on you and on me and on the whole world, and we would not live to tell about it. But Jesus did live to tell about it, because on the third day he rose out of it and showed himself to be more powerful than all of that pride and evil and dysfunction. And so now in Jesus Christ, you have both justice and victory. You have justice being done for all the pride that divides and destroys, because he took the punishment for it. And then you also have victory because he rose out from it and showed himself to be more powerful than all of it. And he gives all of it, the justice, the forgiveness, and the victory to us. And now he says that even though you suffer under this and dysfunctional relationships that you are a victim of, and even though you are guilty of this, dysfunctional relationships that you create and perpetuate, you will not be held accountable for this, nor controlled by this. Because of Jesus Christ, you're forgiven from this. And you're set free from this dynamic, even though you still wrestle with it. It will not get the last word. That's the promise of Jesus. But there's even more. Look at the last few verses of Obadiah's very short little book, starting at verse 19. He starts to list off all these countries, all these places. And I wonder, why does he do that? He says, people from the Negev will occupy the mountains of Esau, and people from the foothills will possess the land of the Philistines. They will occupy the fields of Ephraim and Samaria, and Benjamin, that's a tribe of Judah, will possess Gilead. This company of Israelite exiles who are in Canaan will possess the land as far as Zarephath. The exiles from Jerusalem who are in Sepharad will possess the towns of the Negev. Deliverers will go up on Mount Zion to govern the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord's. What is he saying? Well, he's listing off all these places that God's people, having been ransacked by Babylon and taken captive by Babylon, have either been pulled from or scattered to. These are the areas that they've been pulled from as they've been taken captive, or they've had to run out of fear and be scattered to. And what he's saying is there's coming a day where a deliverer, the other way this can be translated in Hebrew is savior, where saviors will go up on the Mount Zion, which is Jerusalem, and they will establish a kingdom where God's people occupy all of these areas, and all of these areas represent the world. Where God's people fill the world, not having been taken captive or having run out of fear as a way to try to save themselves, but they will occupy the entire world because they are part of a new kingdom that belongs to the Lord, where they have been delivered from all their oppressors, and they are bound together by the fact that they have been saved. So there's going to come a kingdom where God's people are as numerous as the stars in the sky, occupying every city, every town, every place, and they will be bound together not by the fact that they've been dominated by some foreigner, but the fact that they've been delivered and connected together by mercy and grace. That's the great promise. And friends, this promise too has been and is being fulfilled. Because what we believe is that this kingdom, this family that God has promised to foster and create, has been fostered and created in Jesus. It's the church. The church is the kingdom, the place where God's family exists and where mercy and grace reigns and rules, and where now people, bound together not by the fact that they've been dominated by sin and pride and death, but the fact that they've all been treated not as their sins deserve, but have been covered in mercy and grace, that's what binds us together, are located in every town, in every country, in every place, from the place where the Philistines live to the place out in Fulshire where the other Philistines live, like every place. God's people are found, bound together by mercy and grace. And God is reigning and ruling in that kingdom right now through his church. And there will come a day, yes, when Jesus comes back and he establishes that kingdom in greater fullness, where all the remnants of dysfunction are pushed away and we live in a completely perfect and recreated world, where that reign and rule of mercy and grace is even more real and more profound than it is right now. That will come when Jesus returns. But for right now, that world, that reign, that rule is still very much real and alive, and it's among us. And we are called to be a place where we don't let divisions fester, where we don't let dysfunction get the last word, where we try to treat each other not as rivals, but as siblings, as family members, and where we let mercy and grace get the last word, and being bound together by that thing that connects us, which is Jesus, rather than be defined by the issues and the hurts and the harms between us. That's what it means to be a part of this kingdom that Obadiah prophesied about. Which brings me back to the question I started with. What are the greatest rivalries of all time? There's bound to be some things that you think of that weren't on my list. Maybe what came to mind for you was, Democrats versus Republicans. That seems to be an enduring rivalry. Or maybe Taylor Swift and Kanye. Is that still a thing? I don't know. Or maybe in your house, it's between those who want to wash the dishes before they go in the dishwasher and those who want to trust the role of the dishwasher and put them in there dirty. That's a feud in our house. Or maybe if you think about the enduring feuds in this world, what comes to mind is not from something from history or pop culture, but it's someone in your family. Is there a relationship where pride is creating a problem, making a division and an issue between you and somebody else worse than it needs to be? Maybe the greatest feud that's going on in your world is between you and a sibling, you and a relative, you and a parent, you and a former friend. And I know that there's history there, there's hurt there, there's legitimate pain there, and I don't want to minimize that, but my hope is that there's not an abundance of pride on your part there, where you are holding on too tightly to this right to feel wronged, this self-righteous stance that says, I'm good, they're bad, I'm right, they're wrong, which can lead to, I'm human, they're not. I'm okay with them suffering because they're getting what they deserve. Because if that's the case, I know they may have hurt you and wronged you, but you're not making it any better. You're being a bit of an Esau. And that's not good. May we be people who despite our dysfunction and our disconnection with other people, we seek to treat them not as rivals in a feud, but as family members to be loved. Seeking, when possible, reconciliation, seeking to offer grace and mercy that is undeserved. Because that's what God in Christ has given to us all. Amen.